Hello, it's Chuck from Above the Basement, Boston Music and Conversation. Whether we realize it or not, the current opioid crisis affects us all. And while many people donate their time and resources to fight this huge problem, we met two women who imagined something unique and bigger. In November 2017, Kristen Williams-Haseotes created the Above the Noise Foundation, an organization that promotes awareness, education, and advocacy for this addiction crisis that has touched so many lives. Maureen Cavanagh is a mom and author of the recently published book, If You Love Me, A Mother's Journey Through Her Daughter's Opioid Addiction. They are both determined to wipe out stigma and proudly share this mission. They were joined by a passionate team coming together to give rise to the first large-scale sober music festival, paying tribute and raising awareness to addiction and stigma, and to honor and support those who have made it to the other side, recovery. We were honored to sit across from these women as we learned about their personal journeys, their message of recovery, and the road that led them to their wonderful event in Pawtucket, Rhode Island on September 29th, Recovery Fest 2018. So here is our conversation with Kristen Williams-Haseotes and Maureen Cavanagh, recorded above the basement in my house in Carlisle, Massachusetts.
Maureen Cavanagh, Kristen
Williams-Haseotes. Yes, interchangeable.
Welcome to Chuck's house.
Yes, welcome to my house.
Thank you for having us, Chuck. It's a beautiful
there's
home.
another thing I wanted to say. So we always say, oh, that hurt, jokingly, but it turns out to be true that it's 2 degrees of separation. It's not 6.
I agree.
And we discovered that, my cousin who lives on Nantucket, yes. Plus you used to work at Merrill.
Yes, I did.
I did too. I was in New York and Merrill for
You're
13
kidding.
years.
Oh, wait.
But it's more of a connection with my cousin, Sarah.
On Nantucket?
Yes.
That is weird.
Her husband is a fisherman.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that.
Sports fishing takes people out in the boat.
That's not a bad deal, huh?
Not a bad deal, except for those sharks now. There's a lot of sharks out in the Cape now.
Yes.
And we have a connection in Maine, Cape Elizabeth.
Yes, your niece and nephew go to Cape Elizabeth High.
Yes, they do.
And my wife grew up in Cape and went to that same high school. And Maureen comes to us from Marblehead, but was in New York before that.
That's right.
In New York, where?
Queens, Brooklyn. I lived
the real deal New York.
Yeah.
Not like fake New York like me, because I'm from Rochester.
Oh, I grew up in Long Island, so I'm a little fake.
So are you Mets? You Mets or Yankees?
Yankees.
All right.
You gotta love the Yankees.
I don't know if you gotta love them, but you gotta.
Well, actually,
understand.
I'm much more of a Yankees fan when I'm in Boston, just to aggravate people.
That used to aggravate us much more back in the day.
Yes, I know. You don't have nothing to be aggravated about anymore. No, this is true.
Not so much anymore.
We were going to have dinner after this, right?
Oh, you're invited too, I guess.
Can I have dinner too?
Yeah, you can. You can have dinner too.
Yeah, this is the first time we've talked in this place since the first episode, and we are now like episode 110, I think, Chuck, right?
This will be 111.
We are above the basement and you're above the noise, which I think was one of the first things that caught my eye, talking about 2 degrees of separation. I have to say, it was something about that name that piqued my interest just like 3 weeks ago or so on Facebook. Then I read the next line, and it was Recovery and Recovery Fest. And I was about to go to bed, and thanks to you guys, I only slept 5 hours that night because for the next 2 hours, I read more about this. And I was fascinated. How can we connect above the noise and above the basement? And I'm so thrilled that we're here across the table from you.
I'm very touched by that because you just don't know if people actually take the time to read what you put out into the universe.
Yes, I know. I agree.
That's amazing.
It was one of these feelings that I think you were mentioning, Maureen, earlier about your book. This isn't as personal, but it was one of those feelings I had that I haven't had in a long time about a meeting that I felt should happen, A, and B, the idea of a alcohol, drug-free music fest was like, boom, hit me in the face. Mm-hmm. And like other people that I've discussed this with, musicians and non-musicians over the last month, it's like, why didn't this exist?
You mentioned the name, and the name came about. We sat around a table with a meeting of different folks that were involved in establishing the foundation. We really just wanted to rise above the noise. All that noise. We wanted it to be about community and music and families and love and recovery and people who were doing great things, the best they could, where they could, with what they had. We just wanted to rise above the noise. And I have to give Garrett Haid credit for it because we went around with several names and he just said above the noise. That's how the name came about.
And what does noise mean to you?
In this context meant lots of what should happen. what could happen, what may happen, what doesn't happen. I think the noise meant stuff that was happening but wasn't working. So let's just rise above it and come together for something that's bigger than the sum of the parts.
There's a lot of efforts out there. There's programs, there's people coming together, but it's almost like a matrix of people just trying to get through this chaos of addictions.
Yeah, there's definitely that. I mean, there's so many people trying so hard to do things, and the missing piece is bringing it all together. I came into this a little bit late, so the ideas were already formed. And when I first heard about it, I thought to myself, nobody's really going to do that. I mean, that sounds like something that needs to be done. I'm finding that there's the people that are working on this project and on this concert and in this foundation are doing it with their whole heart. I mean, this is the most unbelievable group of people that want to make a difference and are just going to do whatever it takes to make that happen. And it's so needed right now.
It's funny you say that. Along those lines, we really don't know what we're doing. I say that with all humility. We have professionals and we have a great production company and we have world-renowned musicians and we can't fail. We've got the place, we've got the production company, we've got the talent, but we as a group, we're all new to this.
Yeah.
You know, we're mothers and brothers and sisters and recovering addicts and, you know, we're just pulling it all together. And the amazing part of it is that it actually is resonating with people like you who, you know, talk to people in the music industry all the time.
You may not have done this before. You haven't pulled a concert together. But like I think Maureen just put it too, is that this is their heart and soul. There's a passion that can drive someone more than their degree, or are they concert promoters that are household names? What is that passion?
Hers is far more.
I was going to talk about yours.
It's just fascinating and like awe-inspiring. But simply put, I am a business person who, when I was 19, didn't know what addiction was, but knew that I couldn't stop using cocaine or alcohol. So I called a psychiatric hospital to say I was crazy. And then they explained what addiction was. And I went into treatment, went back to my lovely university, and found out that there were other people like me and they were getting kicked out of school. So I started a program for students who had issues with alcohol or drug-related issues, and they were being expelled. So I said, well, we should really have a program for these kids because I'm one of them. So
you were 19?
I was 19.
Notre Dame?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I started speaking at dorms because the rectors didn't know what to do with the kids that were drinking. And so I became, myself and one other student, just became people that went around and told my story. From there, we started an Office of Alcohol and Drug Education. By the end of my 6 years, not 4 years, of undergraduate degree, you know, we had 40 meetings on campus. We had 600 students in recovery. I got an award at graduation from President Bush. And I was an inadvertent advocate who then went on to work in human services with recovery and addiction.
The magic part of this whole thing is just telling your story. That's all you have to do is if you start telling your story, that makes people want to tell their story.
That comes, not to correct you, because that's absolutely the genesis of everything. When people connect with each other, anything can happen. But for me, I left that world of working in human services and in addiction and recovery, and I went and I had my child unexpectedly in graduate school, and I had to go get a job in a bank. And I worked in community development and finance and banking, and I went on to do different things, and I left the world of, addiction and went into business. My story at 19 gave me the most amazing life that anybody could have. So now when you hear the statistics, 174 people a day die of an overdose. 39,000 mothers have lost children so far this year.
Every 8 minutes, somebody dies of an overdose.
My story is something where I had a problem. I was able to get help. I got through it and I went back to school. That doesn't happen. There are people out there, it happens, luckily, but the drugs are different. The time is different. It's deadly. And I was one of the lucky ones. So anybody in my position, I feel, who is on the other side of addiction needs to come forward and do whatever they can. You asked, what the passion is for me. It's that I I'm one of the lucky ones. I got to the other side, and I have a full life with children and a happy marriage and a great business. And there are others who are just like me who may not have the chance I had. There is not one 19-year-old addict out there today who wants to be an addict. There's no difference between me and them. It's just I feel like the drugs are deadlier and more addicting, and that's the purpose of them, to get them hooked so they continue to use.
Is part of what your passion is to try to harness what this is now, and I'm pointing to above the noise, to get to that 19-year-old to say there's something, you don't have to create a drug and alcohol system at your college. Is there something that person can do with that information?
I'm telling you that you have just nailed what my dream of this event is, that yes, we have maybe 7,000 people in recovery that have a safe place to go and listen to a live band, because every other concert someone's getting high next to them, and that's a trigger for them to get high, and then maybe they've been clean for 6 weeks and they can't go and listen to live music. But maybe it's some kid from URI or Brown who says, I may go to the bar after this event, but I can stand there next to somebody who may struggle. And for that moment of that day, I can be clean and sober, because I am an ally. With these numbers and these people dying, it's no longer those guys. It's everybody has a brother or a sister or a kid. Not only do we have to provide the event, we have to explain it. It's one thing to have all of us who understand recovery. It's another thing to have people that don't, and have them there and say, teach me. Let me learn a little more. Let me realize that what you've been through in your life is what I could have been through.
That's it right there. We have to bring everybody together, and that's the only way we're going to get ahead of this. Because we're all kind of survivors of this epidemic, whether we've been directly affected or somebody we love we've lost. So we're all touched by this. But it's a scary thing, and we tend to move away from it. But what Kristen just said is so true. Just coming there and being part of this, lots of people have these grand ideas and they don't act on them. But she's acted on them. And if you talk to her for any length of time, like I said, every time I talk to her, I have another revelation of something else she's done. She spent her whole life doing things like this. Sometimes all the things you do in your life bring you to this point where you can actually create some kind of a shift. And that's what I hope we're doing. I think that that's what needs to be done, too. Some kind of societal shift about the way we think about substance use disorder and the people it affects.
There's a lot of noise.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise. People stand around and complain, but will you stand next to somebody who is struggling and come to a concert and support them and say and be there for them and maybe change your own life for just a little bit?
Some of the noise, you haven't mentioned this as part of the noise, but some of the noise is, that won't happen to me. That's those people over there. It happens to not in my lovely little town I live in or something. Mm-hmm. But it's happened to you. Right.
And they need to come and see what recovery looks like, too, because this whole concert will be filled with people in recovery. Beautiful, healthy, young people with their whole lives ahead of them that will go on to have families and work and contribute because we're supporting them.
That's what I loved, how you said the people who are not in recovery, they don't have the problem, they're going to be there, but they're going to be an ally to those people who do have that problem. Right. Which I thought, I like that idea of an ally
I love
there.
That.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Maureen's story is so amazing because you talk about you never thought it could happen to you. And that's why I think she's such an example of somebody who shares her story, because it can happen to anybody.
It can, yeah.
Another important date in September 4th. But you have a book coming out. It's called If You Love Me.
A mother's journey through her daughter's opioid addiction.
Are you okay with telling us about your story?
Well, please. There's nothing left to tell after you read that book.
That's
You'll know
true.
everything.
You did write a book. Yeah.
Well, this is like a perfect example of it can't happen to me and not because it didn't. I come from this. I've come from alcoholism and drug addiction. I grew up in that kind of environment and moved away and didn't want to be associated with anything like that with the family that was still using. And I thought that if I raised my children away from that and they never saw it, that it wouldn't affect them. And I did that, and I worked hard, and I educated myself, and have 4 beautiful children, and all raised the same way. And one of them had that genetic predisposition for a substance use disorder. And the odd thing is, of the 4, I think even they would say the sweetest, gentlest, most empathetic, last one in the world you would ever, because, kids give you a run for your money, and the older ones did that. And she was like the perfect kid all through high school and started doing drugs, little in high school, but I didn't really know about it. And it turned into a full-blown heroin addiction, and that lasted years. So I learned that I thought I was smarter and I was raising my children better, and didn't realize that even myself, I had just dodged a bullet and she got the full barrel. This is how things like that happen. So we like to protect ourselves that this can't happen to us because we did all these things right. And I'm here to say that you can do all those things right. And I know many, many, many people that their children are lost in this disease. They've done everything they possibly could do to help them. And their children have done everything they could possibly do to find their way out of this, because nobody wants to live like this. No one. But as a society, we need to change things, and we need to change the way we treat people. We need to change the way we think about addiction, and we need to change the way we support people.
I think you mentioned stigma without saying stigma. You clearly want to have an impact on the stigma that many of us have, like we do with mental illness, is how we can change how we view and more as a disease, right, rather than this person messed up and, frankly, some even think deserve problems.
Right, a moral failing, rather than, it is a disease. And people much smarter than I am have made that determination. When people say that, they argue that, well, it's not an opinion, it's an actual medical fact. It is a disease.
I got involved in an event a year ago that I was not the founder. I was asked to come in as a sponsor. I was asked to share my story, and I realized that nobody around the table had a story that they were sharing. And I felt like that was the missing piece. If I talked about it, it was okay to talk about it. So I did. And I preface it by saying, I'm not the perfect example of somebody in recovery, but when this is what happened to me when I was young, this is what saved my life, this is what I do every day now. So people started telling their story. That's part of reducing the stigma. The other thing about music, it's musicians and drugs have always been interwoven. Ubiquitous. It's
sex,
just,
drugs, and rock and roll.
Exactly. The musicians I've met are either in recovery, dead, or kind of almost dead, trying to figure out how they stayed alive. And that's the story. Musicians nowadays are kind of leading the way out.
Leading the way out.
They
I like
are.
the way you put that.
Nowadays, when musicians stand up there and say, I've been clean for a year, that means something to someone that looks up to them. That can be more powerful than certainly my story, certainly than any of our stories. And that was also our goal, that it was that you had people who stood up and talked about their struggles and why they don't need it anymore to live a full, productive life. We also didn't want musicians that were only clean and sober. That would be great, but we don't need that. You just need to care. So PVRIS is a great Boston band. They really care about this cause. Recovery isn't their platform, mental health is, but they really care about this community. Fitz and the Tantrums, their lead singer is in recovery for a long time, and as is Macklemore. But I do think musicians have done a really great job, and they need to be encouraged to do an even better job for telling their story and leading by example.
We've talked to a lot of musicians who are very upfront about they don't drink. It's definitely in the forefront of a lot of the musicians that we've talked to. So it's not a stigma for them.
No, and I'm sure they have, or most of them have, and they've just, you come out alive through that whatever era they're in or whatever lifestyle that is. It's it's a hard driving.
Well, you look at
rock and roll lifestyle.
Aerosmith. Those guys from Aerosmith. Those guys, they were a mess.
Sure.
And they came out and they're constantly talk a lot about their recovery and how they treated themselves and how they fought to get out of it, and it's always a constant struggle for them. But they talk about it all the time.
And what I love about Stephen, he still says, and every time I start drinking again, I either get divorced, get into a fight, or something. So every day is a struggle, but I just realize it's not, I can't.
Well, that
can't
humanizes it. Because what it does is it shows this bigger than life rock star that doesn't make it okay to drink again, but he shows the consequences and he relates to the common guy or girl.
And it's not about being perfect. He can try to go back to drinking and realize it doesn't work, so he self-corrects. that has to be part of the story as well, because recovery isn't the same for everybody.
So very briefly, I see in my day job, I'm a physician and I at MGH, and I see these are the people that have overdosed and that have anoxic brain injury. So these are the people that are impaired for the rest of their lives, whether mildly or severely. The reason I bring it up too is that I wanted to get back into the festival a little bit, to some of the resources, some of the stuff that you guys are aiming to do on September 29th. I wanted to bring those people up, those people that are so affected by opiates, that are the ones that don't die and are the ones that aren't just ongoing recovery issues and addictions and going through drug rehab and in and out and causing angst with families, but it's the middle ones that I wanted to ask you are these people that have had brain injury? Will you have some type of discussion about this at the festival itself?
We have 70 nonprofits, I think it is now, grassroots mostly, some national nonprofits, all in that festival area at 2 o'clock when it opens, and then again inside, set up to answer questions, offer help. That's an unbelievably important point, because those people are forgotten. The ones with the brain injuries, the ones with all the medical
just like
issues,
traumatic brain injury,
that with the medical issues that continue on afterwards, the cellulitis that's taking people's limbs. I mean, the nursing homes are now filling with people that have overdosed or that have had injuries, blood injuries.
Well, the big one is endocarditis, where they get
Endocarditis,
infections in their bloodstream, and then they flip clots to their brain and get strokes as well.
So we have young people with old people injuries.
Exactly.
And they're going to fill our nursing homes. I mean, there's so many reasons why we need to care. You can't make people care. You can't. But even for the people that can't have empathy, we have to look at that. We have to look at the toll this will take on our education system, with the children that are born with mothers that are using and are delayed and need extra help. The emotional issues that a lot of these kids are having when they're raised by their grandparents or by others because their parents aren't here anymore. There are so many reasons for us to care, if only for financial reasons, because this is going to affect the economy and the future of who is going to work in this economy when a quarter of this generation is dying of overdose.
Yeah, if you can't care because it's right to care, there's other reasons to care.
Absolutely.
Well said.
CVS has become a sponsor of the festival, and we had a great conversation about the fact that they touch every person who is struggling, if not every day, every week. I actually think there's huge purchasing power in that. If for no other reason than just to say, if CVS cares, would you rather go to Rite Aid or CVS because they care about something that's important to you, if you are affected by this crisis.
Wait, isn't CVS Cares actually their slogan?
It probably is. I just thought of it right now. I just pushed it. I use them as an example because they're a Rhode Island company and they're already doing some.
Are they really?
Yes.
They're based out of Rhode Island?
They are. And they're just a wonderful company that already does a lot. They have an opioid overdose task force. And
nobody really cares why you jump in.
Right.
As long as you jump in.
Exactly.
Right.
What else about the festival?
We don't care how much we make on this. We'd like to give all the money to all the grassroots nonprofits, but it's not about the money. This is about filling the stadium. Why? You fill the stadium. That's when you move hearts and minds. You tell the artist that we can fill a stadium. Fill the stadium. Bring the people. The rest will happen. That magic will happen. People will get it when they show up. For kids, I'm thinking about college kids because there's 5 or 6 college campuses around. They're just getting back to school. And I said, I want to just explain it over and over until they get it. I don't want one kid to come and say, oh, God, I wish, what do you mean I can't drink here? I want them to come and say, I came because I care about this, and I care about someone who may be struggling standing next to me, and I'm here to support him. And that will change their life and make them not only an ally forever, but make them a better human being.
So we're hoping that people that aren't even going to the concert come by, listen to the bands that are playing in the parking lot with all these amazing artists that are playing in the parking lot and enjoy that day. There will be food trucks. There'll also be national nonprofits giving out information, and employment opportunities. There'll also be the Rhode Island nonprofits, including the Providence Safe Station is going to be there, and doing Narcan training, giving away Narcan. Out in the parking lot from 2 o'clock until 4 o'clock is for everyone, and we want everyone to come. We want people to come that need help finding treatment, that don't know the signs to look for. Parents, we want them to come. We want everybody to come.
This is also free.
This is all free. So when the doors open at about 4 o'clock to the stadium, people can come, find their seats, and at 5 o'clock the music will start. And what we have is an indie band contest going on the website. So the winner of the indie band contest will open up the show, which is very exciting because we have a lot of people that are in recovery and very excited about the opportunity to play on the same stage as Macklemore. Ringing the stadium, there will be 40 nonprofits from all over the tri-state area in New England. And the goal is the sponsorships, the donations, all of that, it goes back to the nonprofits. So our hope is to give back to those grassroots organizations.
Macklemore, can you briefly tell us how that came to be?
He was really the first artist that said, I really dig what you're doing, and this is really important. And he has his own foundation that he does great work with, and they heard about what we were doing, and he really jumped on board.
The impact that Fitz will have, that PVRIS will resonate with different generations and will resonate with different types of music fans.
And I have to give James Montgomery credit. He is, he's not somebody that struggles with addiction. He just cares a lot. And that's the beauty of James, is that he is believes that he is to be of service to others. A year ago, when I was involved with him at another festival to raise money for the opioid crisis on Cape Cod, we sat in Newport, Rhode Island, and I said, well, what do you think? And he said, well, I've had about 500 people tell me that I made a big difference in their life and their family. And then I said, well, I've had about 500 people, at least, who said the same thing to me. So we looked at each other and said, are we up for another one? And James said, I'm up for it if you are. So he walked the first steps with me. I wouldn't have gone forward with this without James, because James cares, and he is, in everything he does, he puts others before himself.
Well, congratulations to both of you. I know it hasn't happened yet, but it's going to be amazing.
It's more than a concert. This is so much more than just a concert. This is changing something. I just know it is.
Recovery Fest 2018 is on September 29th, and you can see the lineup and purchase tickets at recoveryfest2018.com. You can learn more about this amazing foundation at abovethenoisefoundation.org, and you can purchase Maureen's book, If You Love Me, A Mother's Journey Through Her Daughter's Opioid Addiction, on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. Go to abovethebasement.com, where you can join us on Patreon. Sign up for our newsletter, listen and subscribe to our podcast, like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, and look at all the nice pictures we post on Instagram. We are everywhere. On behalf of Ronnie and myself, thanks for listening. Tell your friends, and remember, Boston music, like its history, is unique.